manifesto. If you want equality, get a job, because the best form of social protection will be that job. Most of us assume that the state should act as the best form of social protection for people, but it seems we've been wrong all along. Today, the government has made it clear that protection is no more, and we are to look towards the multinational, the company, the employer, or the entrepreneur to provide us with social security. That is if we can find one to take us on, like the people of Donegal. The consequence of such a job-centred approach in budgetary policy means not only will social inequality and regional inequality continue to be felt across rural Ireland, it will prevail for another generation to come. Despite the positive outlooks for the economic recovery and economic growth projected by the government, the social consequences that we have seen from previous budgets will continue to divide this country. For my constituency of Donegal, unfortunately, a job-focused budget is not good news. High rates of unemployment, coupled with the rise in precarious employment, part-time and seasonal work, has meant that working families have had to rely even more on social welfare to supplement their incomes. Income supports such as Job Seekers Benefit and Farm Assist and its income disregards were drastically cut in 2012 as part of this coalition's incentive to make work pay, and families that still can't recover from those. Add to that the pressures of additional taxes such as property and water taxes, then making work pay becomes a comical suggestion. The increase in the USE tax credit brings now 700,000 working people in this country out of the tax net. Add to that the 59,000 families in receipt of family income supplement. All we see is that this government subsidising low pay right across the economy and making us into a low pay economy for everybody. The changes in the Job Seekers Transitional Allowance for lone parents, increasing the income disregard. This is a modest approach, but as the Lone Parents Group One Parents say, it's increasing a parent's ability to stay in low-paid employment. And that is the focus that this government has had. Beyond the packages outlined today, the government has missed an opportunity to reform the taxation system. Social Justice Ireland has presented a fairer, more transparent alternative which would have made tax credits refundable. Such a reform would have meant that the full value of tax credits would go to everyone who has an earned income. This would have resulted in more beneficiaries in low-paid employment and would improve the net income of workers whose incomes are lowest. For those who can't work, there's very little in this budget, except for the CARES tax credit and the restoration of the respite grant. But the government can't be congratulated for bringing it back to the levels it was, because you took it away in the first place, just like so many of the other measures in this budget. There is very little here to support people in this budget in relation to people with disabilities, people who are on the margins of our society. What about the funding that has been cut over the years to the Centres for Independent Living, the Family Resource Centres, the people who are working with those who are outside the working life of this society and people who are on low incomes right across the country? There is also no support for rural Ireland visible in this budget. The move away from charging for the use of bank cards and the move towards a cashless society will actually place more hardship on people who are unbanked, the 17% of our society. And this government has continued to refuse to allow the post office network to participate in the standard bank account, which would actually benefit those people. And there's no mention in the Minister's speech to financial inclusion at all. We look at other vital supports for rural Ireland in terms of trying to retain GPs in the rural areas. There's no mention of the restoration of the rural practice allowance or no recognition of the peripherality of areas like Donegal and the recruitment processes to be able to keep people and professionals in our areas. The government has allocated 8 million extra towards speech and language therapy for children, and that has to be welcomed. But however, in a constituency like Donegal, where there are 300 children in need of services for each speech and language therapist, this will be a small drop in the ocean towards helping those people. Once again, this year's budget was another missed opportunity for those on the margins of our society. And unfortunately, going by the mantra of the coalition, they will continue to be marginalised as those with jobs will be prioritised. This is not the Ireland we want to carry into the second century of statehood. It is young, but it is not naive, and it is definitely not inexperienced. Minister Noonan aptly referenced the 1916 Rising in his budget speech, A rising in itself was born to break away from the arbitrary forces of inequality and poverty that helped lay the foundations of this state. But how are we going to continue that, and how does this budget actually deal with that for people today? I would say it doesn't do anything to raise those people on the margins of our society.
Thank you, Deputy Catherine Murphy.
Thank you. If what occurred today was a